everyone on what was coming in. It'd be like so much time and effort to do that. And also, I was on vacation. So it is good to be back. It's great to see all your smiling faces. And I'm excited to share with you, okay, this presentation I'm going to basically give you guys today. Hey. Now, I'm not sure. Every time I hit the presentation mode, okay, Google question. Direct with access your screen. Okay. Hopefully that works. Everyone still hear me okay? Good. All right. So I'm going to take you through presentation of what I've been up to for these past several weeks and what's changing, what's coming in, what new discoveries and everything. I'm just going to try to get through this as quick as I can. And don't worry if you don't understand it all. That's okay. It's going to be fine. But you might remember that I talked a lot last year about. And please make sure everybody's mute. So, so basically, last year I talked a lot about the pyramids having different musical notes, and I've spent a lot of time in the last few weeks really contemplating that and trying to understand: is there a song? What's the song of the pyramids? And I really wanted to understand this, and I was kind of struggling because how do you basically find modulation for something like a pyramid? Is a static object. It might be living stone, but it's a static object, and it's going to always have the same note playing, right? If it's resonating at some frequency just based on its architecture, it's going to have the same note playing forever while it's standing. And so I was struggling with this concept until I learned about the shimmer, which some of you saw me kind of have the whole conversation about shimmer on Orion Architect. And then I realized that not only do we have modulation for frequency, but we also have temporal modulation within musical notes. And the temporal modulation is directly tied to the frequency as well. So that in the sense with dual track shimmer, you can create a music out of a static note, which is kind of something I had never thought of before. So, but let me first take you through the whole process of how I got to where I got. And the first aspect of this, I wish it could be bigger for you guys. It's just that when I do a full page presentation, it seems to just like not allow it to happen. But if you look at this, you'll see that each of the pyramids have a different slope angle. So the Great Pyramid has a slope angle of 51.85397 degrees. Then you've got Khafre Pyramid, the second pyramid, with 53.131 degrees. And then you've got Menkaure Pyramid with 51.34 degrees. Now, why did they choose different slope angles? Doesn't really make sense, right? So this is when I figured out the cipher was this, that they're basically encrypting some information for us about musical interval, and that encryption is based on the height of the pyramid over its half base, independent of no matter what measurement system they use. It's got to be based entirely on ratio. So if you look at Menkaure Pyramid, the height is 5 and its half base is 4. So its full base would be 8. So it'd be 5/8. And that is the proportion of the pyramid. No matter what unit of measurement you use, that's the proportion of its height to base. So therefore, that determines its slope angle, right? So the slope angle. And then what that does, when you take the height over a half base, it gives you one musical interval. And then if you want the inverse musical interval, you simply take the full base over the height. So in a way, if you wanted to encrypt your knowledge of harmonics, you would probably put it into the construction of a pyramid structure. Because when someone starts to analyze it, they'll come to the conclusion that I need to look at the right triangle inside of it to see what they're actually telling us. Oh, and boy, oh boy, there it is. There's that interval. And that interval is determining what the slope angles are. So for example, a diminished fifth and a fourth, a major third and a minor third is going to determine these exact slope angles. And then without too much headache, you can figure out that the Giza Plateau is literally 8 notes of the musical scale already. And then you figure out that, okay, the Great Pyramid has 4 notes embedded within it, which would be the diminished and augmented fifth and fourth, and then also the octave and the unison note. And from that, you can figure out, well, that must mean that there's 2 pyramids missing because each other pyramid is representing 2 of the musical intervals. So they're inverse relationships. So the 5/4 and the 8/5 is Menkaure pyramid. The Khafre pyramid is 4/3 and 3/2. But then you start noticing also that it seems to be a pattern: 5/4, 4/3, 3/2, and 2/1 pi. It's like, geez, that's pretty amazing. And it actually comes down to 1 as well, because the diameter of a circle with circumference of pi comes out to 1. So it's literally 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this idea that the pyramids were built at separate times and, autonomously, is just not going to fly, because they're musical notes. These are exactly musical intervals, and it's kind of indisputable. It's undisputable. So you might remember also that I took this analysis a step further and said, well, okay, if I take all the pyramids of Giza Plateau and I invert them like this, and so you've got the 5/4, 4/3, 3/2, 2/1 pi, right, relationship all the way through. Surprise, surprise, it actually makes, when you include the Giza Plateau as well, and the 2 missing pyramids that would be there, it makes a full staff of Hermes with 7 positions proportionally. So I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then you might remember also, I took the analysis to beyond Egypt, and I looked at the Teotihuacan pyramids, the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon. And I've expanded it further and gone all the way to the Bosnia pyramids as well as the Chinese pyramids. And I've expanded this now to 33 total pyramids. And actually, I even put it on Polymath Calculator. So some of you might have seen this already, that if you go to Polymath Calculator, so if we flip this, there's actually, you'll find a pyramid page. So when you can find in the pyramid tab, pyramids, this. It even gives you the ability to listen to the frequency of each of these notes. So this is the Great Pyramid. This is the Giza Plateau and one of the pyramids. And then now we start to get pyramids that start showing up with this. So this is actually matching the Jed Efre Abu Rawash Jed Satellite Pyramid. This is matching Menkaure Pyramid. This is the perfect fourth, which is Khafre Pyramid. And then this is the Great Pyramid again. And then this is again the Khafre Pyramid, as you can see. Menkaure Pyramid. Then the Jed Efre Satellite Pyramid. And then I had this down as the Djoser Step Pyramid, but actually the same angle for the for one of the missing pyramids, so that the Giza Plateau is self-contained for the entire octave. And then this one is the Great Pyramid. So these are the notes it's basically going through. Kind of cool, right? Okay, so this is the sound of the pyramid. Now, if I go back to the presentation, okay, so here we go. Back to this. The big question is, right, what song are the pyramids architecture in globally then? It's kind of a big question. It was perplexing me. I wanted to really understand it. And so I started to analyze it. And as I started to analyze it, I started realizing that there was more to the story that I needed to research, because I couldn't make sense of how the musical notes would be different, right? If they're just static architecture.
Every pyramid possesses a physical geometry. We can take that static structural envelope and translate it directly into an acoustic frequency. To execute this translation, we need exactly 2 measurements: the original vertical height of the pyramid and the full horizontal width of its base. Here is a standard monument cross-section. By taking the full height and dividing it by half the base, we calculate the architectural rise-to-run ratio. We then multiply that dimensionless ratio by a baseline frequency of 432 Hz. The output is a specific native tone. This equation provides a rigorous mathematical bridge. It allows us to read static stone dimensions as dynamic sound waves. We can apply this translation mapping to the Egyptian architectural canon across the Memphis necropolis. We can then broaden the dataset globally, pulling in the precise geometry of Mesoamerican step structures like the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan. Finally, we can include the meticulously planned burial map.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry.
Every pyramid possesses a physical geometry. We can take that static structural
No, it's not right.
envelope and
Sorry.
translate
Figured
it
out a better way to
directly into
explain.
an acoustic frequency. To execute this translation, we need exactly two measurements: the original vertical height of the pyramid and the full horizontal width of its base. Here is a standard monument cross-section. By taking the full height and dividing it by half the base, we calculate the architectural rise-to-run ratio. We then multiply that dimensionless ratio by a baseline frequency of 432 Hz. The output is a specific native tone. This equation provides a rigorous mathematical bridge. It allows us to read static stone dimensions as dynamic sound waves. We can apply this translation mapping to the Egyptian architectural canon across the Memphis necropolis. We can then broaden the dataset globally, pulling in the precise geometry of Mesoamerican step structures like the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan. Finally, we can include the meticulously planned burial mounds of the Far East, such as the Maoling Mound in China, completing a transcontinental catalog. Applying one strict geometric formula to isolated, unrelated cultures across the globe should theoretically yield scattered, arbitrary noise. Instead, the output frequencies form a highly structured, interlocking overtone lattice. To maintain the mathematical integrity of this lattice, the methodology relies on a strict constraint: we must preserve the native octave. Conventional musical analysis collapses octaves. It treats a high A and a low A as identical pitch classes, ignoring the numerical distance between them. This diagram illustrates why octave reduction fails. Doubling or halving a translated frequency erases the monument's literal physical scale. If a pyramid's rise-to-run ratio is 1/3, the formula yields exactly 144 Hz, not an octave equivalent like 288 Hz. Utilizing a rational whole number slope grid is documented historical engineering practice. The Rind mathematical papyrus details the Egyptian second system, specifying pyramid slopes exactly as integer ratios of horizontal run to vertical rise. By utilizing these historical ratio grids and retaining the original physical scale, the resulting frequencies function as authentic acoustic representations of the architecture. This chart displays a logarithmic frequency spectrum, plotting the translated native tones of our global catalog as distinct data points. When arranged this way, exact octave columns emerge. The outputs align precisely on columns spanning 144, 288, and 576 Hz. This graph highlights how specific monuments link these columns. A distinct mathematical alignment connects the calculated frequencies of Teotihuacan directly to those at Giza. If we observe how different geographical regions distribute their native tones, a distinct pattern of distribution appears. The data points from central Mexico, the Maya region, Egypt, and China do not overlap at random. They occupy interleaved, distinct bands along the frequency spectrum. In acoustic terms, no single culture voices a complete harmonic chord. They each supply complementary notes, requiring the full global set to resolve the sonority. This interlocking cross-regional complementarity presents a steep statistical hurdle to the theory that these dimensions were chosen arbitrarily and independently. If these scattered monuments form a unified musical structure, we can calculate the mathematical root of the entire catalog. Using rational arithmetic, we determine the greatest common divisor for all documented frequencies in the set. The calculation yields an exact common denominator, 0.72 Hz. Every single monument tone in the working model acts as an exact integer multiplier of this number. The Great Pyramid, for example, represents harmonic 600. In acoustics, this is known as an unstruck fundamental. It is a root frequency that dictates the entire overtone series, despite never being physically sounded. A frequency of 0.72 Hz equates to exactly 43.2 cycles per minute. an infrasonic rhythm mirroring the 432 Hz baseline of the initial mapping equation. The global catalog functions as a massive overtone architecture erected over a singular mathematical ground tone. The pyramids stand as individual tuning forks, drawing their geometry from the exact same mathematical wellspring. We can now pivot from describing known structures to utilizing this lattice as a predictive model for unknown structures. This diagram shows a standard mathematical lattice. Any structured integer grid inherently contains unoccupied low-complexity points, distinct mathematical gaps. These unoccupied lattice points represent exact slope signatures. They act as the mathematical blueprints for monuments that are either uncatalogued or lost to antiquity. This matrix displays the Giza Plateau's internal harmonic lattice. Mapping existing pyramids leaves two primary low-complexity members vacant. These missing notes require a major second ratio of 9/8 and a minor third of 6/5, translating to exact slope angles of 48.366 and 50.194 degrees. If the ancient geometric canon was intentionally complete, structures matching these exact mathematical ratios must have existed on the plateau. We can test this prediction by examining historical documentation of the Giza Plateau prior to modern erosion and urban encroachment. In the 18th century, explorers like Norden and Pocock extensively mapped and illustrated the region. Their cartographic records feature distinct anomalies. The aerial layouts document outlying satellite pyramid symbols positioned west of the primary monuments. Furthermore, the accompanying profile view confirms the lateral sequence and vertical scale of these outlying structures, which are no longer recognized today. When the dimensions of these documented ruins are reconstructed, they match the precise slope angles required to fill the 9/8 and 6/5 vacancies in the mathematical model. Conventional archaeology treats these ruins as insignificant satellite tombs with arbitrary slopes. The mathematical lattice identifies them as missing harmonic anchors. The direct alignment between the empty mathematical lattice nodes and the 18th century cartographic record provides hard physical evidence of a deliberately complete geometric canon. Applying a strict rise-to-run translation equation to ancient architecture exposes a global interlocking harmonic field. This is not arbitrary numerology. It is a formalized translation operating entirely within documented engineering grids and rational arithmetic. The pyramid harmonic lattice is an active, predictive scientific tool capable of recovering the acoustic signatures of monuments we have lost to time.
Okay. Oops, right. So, so can everyone hear me okay? Just want to make sure if somebody wrote that they couldn't. Please write in the chat if you can hear me. Okay, perfect. All right, so basically the translation of the monumental envelopes into harmonics, and this is really where the work went on this. And I just want to say as well, there were some small mistakes in this last little video that I showed at the end that I'm still working on correcting. And it was kind of referencing the satellite pyramids because it didn't know where the new pyramids are that we have found. That's what it really should have been referring to, the not using the word satellite for it, because those are not the satellite pyramids. But anyway, the whole idea here was to look at all of the notes of each one of the pyramids around the world. So again, we had 33 pyramids in the cohort, and they have some very interesting characteristics. And you'll notice that they don't overlap also within the same octave so much at all. Like it's almost as big. You see here, this is the Temple of Quetzalcoatl is 120.6, and all of these numbers also beautiful base 12, base 60 numbers that we find on compasses. 1.296 million seconds is the number of seconds of a compass, for example. 288 hertz, we recognize that one, right? That's a D note in this same just tuning matrix. And then 432 for Khufu. So you've got these exact octave families that seem to be clustered regionally, which is very strange. So you've got the 432 octave family as in Khufu and the Bosnian Sun pyramid. And then you've got 162 octave family, which is the Chinese pyramids. Then you've got 144 octave family with Cholula, the Sun pyramid. And then also Caffrey can fall into that too. And then depending on how you look at one of its ratios, but it's generally all just regionally based. Now, this is another thing that was interesting is that I had noticed that some of the, kind of proportions of the pyramids of the Giza Plateau match the proportions of the pyramids in Mexico. So, for example, the Menkaure Pyramid is 216 feet high. It's tall. And that actually matches the height of the Pyramid of the Sun exactly. Interesting. And then the base of the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico is matching the base of the pyramid, the Great Pyramid on Giza Plateau. So you could say that the Teotihuacan Pyramid of the Sun is actually a mix between Menkaure Pyramid and Khufu. Interesting. And then also you'll notice that the base of the Pyramid of the Moon at Teotihuacan is actually matching the height of the Great Pyramid. So I find it just very, very unlikely statistically that happens by accident. I just can't see that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think it was by accident? Put that in here. Create a poll. Do you think that the proportion matching Giza and Teotihuacan are merely coincidental? Base, height, and length. Wait, I'll have to look. Okay. Because that's what everyone else would say. That's all just coincidence. There was no contact between Mexico when Teotihuacan pyramids were built. They're believed to have been built about 2,000 years ago. So how in the heck would it have been the same exact proportion as the two pyramids together, Menkaure and Khufu? Okay. So regional harmonic matrix. And if you say yes, please say why. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how that just happened to be coincidental. So basically the regional harmonic matrix and Teotihuacan and Cholula and the Maya field. So these are all different kinds of pyramids in Mexico. So I started analyzing those as well. And what I found was that all the pyramids, every pyramid in the world out of the 33 pyramid cohort, actually was always a Hertz frequency based on its slope angle that was a multiple of 0.72 Hertz. And I found that really interesting. And that also is giving us, because it's all based on base 60 and base 60 math, the way you calculate the tonic is you basically would take that 0.72 and multiply it by 600, and that gives you 432. So that becomes the note of the Great Pyramid. So it's sort of like setting all other notes in a way. And you could say that the 0.72 as multiple shows up as a harmonic overtone series that gets populated with all these different notes. How far it goes, we don't know, right? But you could also take it from the inverse direction. You could start with the tonic, and you could start, backwards. And you'll see another part of it, another part of the analysis that I'm going to show you in a little bit exactly what I mean by that. But this is really mind-blowing because this is an unstruck note of 0.72 that yet is expressing this harmonic overtone series all over the world. And so we can start to see what the harmonic integer is. That's just the number multiplying by 0.72 that turns out the exact frequency. Now, another thing that's interesting is that we do have good basis as to why something like this might be the case, because we know that the tetrahedron has 720 degrees as the sum of its angles. And the tetrahedron is the foundational shape of all other more complex geometries. And 720 just gets multiplied. That's why every single polytope will always also be a multiple, right? For regular polytopes, at the very least, will always be a multiple of 720 degrees. And I believe it's actually true for all geometric forms. So that is kind of a very strong parallel, because the 72 showing up over and over again. Now, don't forget the Vitruvian man has his hands outstretched, and his outstretched hands equal 72 inches in length. So there's something about this, and it speaks about it as well in the description, because he's supposed to be 6 feet tall. And the length of the wingspan should be equal to the height for Vitruvian man with ideal proportion. So I started looking at this also with this concept of acoustic shimmer. And this is where I was always trying to figure out in music how to create this overtone series and make it something that's reproducible every time. Not some sort of effect, but can I create micro dissonance so when a choir sings a unison note, because it's slightly dissonant, because everyone's voices are very slightly different, you sometimes end up with this phenomenon where you hear all of the overtones. So it's not just the unison note of la, you'll hear da 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 la, you'll hear all of the notes. And they'll start breathing in and out. And so it doesn't have this tight beating of wah, 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 wah. It goes over a 12-second cycle of breath. And so I started thinking, is there something with, since geometry breathes in higher dimension, does music also breathe in higher dimension? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. So go ahead and just put that in the chat. So just intonation, the silent unstruck note is 0.72 hertz. It's unique, it's heterogeneous. It just sounds like nothing because we can't hear at that level. 27 hertz is the lowest that we can basically go from a hertz frequency to hear it audibly. But what I found was that in precise temperament tuning, you could create shimmer, which then creates two notes next to each other that have decimal extensions that are octaval representations of the overtone series themselves. So instead of just playing 432 hertz, you have 432.081216. And then the other note that is inside of that would be 432.162, 447. And so that's basically giving you the overtone plus dampening. And that relationship makes them totally consonant, even though they're two notes that are right next to each other. They should be dissonant because they're the overtones of the decimal extent. So, it isn't. And it sounds beautiful, and it opens up the whole octave to this overtone series, kind of like the pyramids are doing around the planet. And so when you look at this on the Giza Plateau from a hypothesis perspective, we are still missing 2 or 4 notes, right, for each, for these 2 pyramids. So each one would represent 2 notes. So this would be the minor third and the major second. And the major second pairs with the minor seventh, and the minor third pairs with the major sixth. And that would be the slope angles. And I believe that that's kind of what we're going to find when we finally get that place excavated, even though these are damaged pyramids. And if you haven't been to Egypt yet, you'll know there's plenty of pyramids that look just like that. There's many of them. So Hawara was pretty flattened like that. Basically, there's like 5 or 6 pyramids that you can find. The Lahun pyramid is flattened like that. And they just eroded. So this is the Giza lattice completion, which would be these 2 pyramids. I believe they would have been, one of them 108 feet high, so it's half the size of Menkaure, feet as its base, 120 feet for the other one, and 213 feet for its base. And then we can basically see how the geometry becomes a native frequency, becomes an overtone number, becomes an octave lineage, and then an architectural amplitude. And the volume of the size of the pyramid also has an impact on this as well. So from this, we could figure out which numbers of the overtone series are not represented that should be represented, and figure out where those pyramids should be. Because we could figure out, based on whether we're looking at a semitone scale or a quarter tone scale, we can figure out which one of the next amplitudes there should have been. So that's why these are missing, the 9/8 ratio and the 6/5 ratio. So this is this concept of the unstruck fundamental. And that's what the Great Pyramid is playing the role of, because it is not based on an integer only relationship. It is 2/1 pi is its relationship. So the height over its base. So it's providing the tonic to populate the scale for everyone else. And so they fit as the overtone series with that one tonic contribution from the Great Pyramid. So we started noticing also that beyond frequency and canonical dimensions, there appear to be permutated, across continents as well. So it's like a braid. You can see how they all fit together when you look at the graphs on this, and they're interlocking like a chain. So each of the areas doesn't take up the octaves of the other areas, strangely. And with precise temperament tuning and dual track shimmer, we can actually listen to see what this would sound like. And dual track shimmer creates this looking like a very complex, high number of strands DNA. And this will explain the shimmer.
The dual track shimmer produces a celestial breathing sound. It fixes a centuries old problem. Perfect harmonies leave a mathematical leftover, causing harsh dissonance. Instead of hiding that error, you take a single note, like an A at exactly 432 hertz, and split it into two independent tracks, separated by less than a single hertz. One track is tuned for major third harmonies, while the second is exactly tuned for perfect fifths. Normally, playing two slightly different frequencies makes their waves clash, creating an irritating static. But separated by this exact mathematical leftover, the waves perfectly reinforce and cancel each other. They create a 12-second swell of sound, a physical pulse called amplitude modulation. Because this swing from loud to quiet is so extreme, the tracks don't blend into static. Instead, this deep pulse forces the sound's hidden overtones to break apart and become individually audible. Since this separation is a precise mathematical ratio, the pulse scales perfectly across all notes. It remains completely consonant and uniform in every single musical key. So what exactly happens to that split 432 Hz note we looked at from the very beginning? That ancient, frustrating mathematical error is completely transformed, leaving you with a slow, shimmering, and perfectly continuous breath of life.
So now we're going to listen to see what shimmer sounds like. And I'm going to play with it a little bit, but I'll let you watch this video first, and then we'll do a little playing with it on Polymath Calculator. Equal temperament music. And now I'm playing the exact same chord, shimmer. Where the notes? Take notes. Shows on French that refer to this as the frisson. First bonus. Now, if I just play one note by itself, you hear what I mean. Watch the wave. Maybe you can hear on the other note. That's the harmonics. Imagine what this sounds like when you have the entire orchestra. And like this. Kind of crazy. And look at the wave. So what happens is you go from a static note. So if I play just a basic sine wave in a regular note on shimmer, it noise cancels itself, and then it comes back. Yes, there's this phase interruption. In the high dimensions, geometry breeds. In the dimensions, music. Okay. So I put some polls in there. Please go ahead and participate. I'd love to see your thoughts on this. The first question I asked was, can you hear all the shimmer notes in the background? Because you hear this kind of almost going up and down. And then also, what is your physical reaction to shimmer? Do you have any physical reaction to it? I'm just curious. Everyone experiences these things differently. So I want to just kind of find a way to quantifiably figure out what people are experiencing with it. Okay, so now we're going to go to Polymath Calculator so you can see this, experience it like that. Flare system. Okay, so Okay, so this is, by the way, the staging version of Orion, which I'm doing testing on right now, and hope that we're going to be able to get this out in the next few days. Basically, this is connected to the polymath calculator, fully connected. So this thing is nuts. Has so much like more ability. I can't even like, we're still like scratching our heads over it, trying to understand it. But one of the cool aspects of it is that once you put in, so I just asked it, what are all my placements from the dynamic identity knowledge graph? And it gives me all of my placements. So it knows once I put the information into the knowledge graph, and you'll see it, it can regurgitate all of this. Right. And then also give you all kinds of readings and everything to it. It's super cool. If I go into the polymath calculator, it's right here. And inside of this, you'll find that there's a profile page. You put in your profile stuff, your name and the date of your birth and your time of your birth, et cetera. And then it will give you a full personality profile associated with each of these placements. So this is my natal chart, and it tells me that it's kind of got connections to the dodecahedron. So everyone has, generally different ones. Obviously, there's not that many different platonic solids you choose from, but it will associate one to you. And then what this is doing is that this is under the thesis that when we're born, we don't get to choose our name. We don't get to choose, and it should be our birth name that we didn't choose. We don't get to choose our location of birth. We don't get to choose our time of birth, really. And so some might argue otherwise, that was as a child, but certainly I think it was as the higher self. But we basically break ourselves up into these different 14 faces that have 24 edges. And each of these 24 edges is another one of our astrologies. One by itself is great, but it's only one facet, not even a fact, because you have to combine all of them. And that's what I've really learned through this whole process in order to get truly accurate stuff out of it. And what it's telling me is that these are the things that I should be doing and expressing my talents in my life. And it says, surprise, surprise, I should be an architect of systems, right? A creative artist and a leader and sovereign and innovator and pioneer. And then it even gives me like my life story. And it includes Mayan. I mean, it's got everything in it. And it even tells me all my shadows, which are absolutely correct. And it will also give me associations with certain of mythos characters and archetypes. And then I can even ask it a question, how this person would react to this thing, right? Whatever it is, and how best to communicate with them. So that's pretty cool. And then you can also get a weekly, a monthly, and then you can ask Architect if you would, like to have him do a full, or have her completely do a full reading for you for the month or for the year or for the next 5 years. It's amazing. And it integrates all of these and also gives you full tarot readings as well. So you can see my personality was split up across these things right here. Vedic astrology, my tropical path, and each one of these literal locations as well was very, very deliberate. INTJ, type 8, Enneagram. These are all my placements. Human design, I'm a generator, 2-4 generator. And so once you have all of the inputs, you could basically click on Save Profile and apply to all calculators now, right? So this is cool because now it will, the architect should always remember you, because it always has this information. And before, if you choose to use it before you even ask it a question, it's going to know a lot about you, because I'm telling you, this stuff is accurate. It's like mind-blowingly accurate. So, but now let's go back to the music thing for a moment and look at Shimmer again. So we can see here, and if I put the note, let's say I go with a trumpet sound, or let's say I'll go with a violin rather. But with a violin, I can basically keep it in full temperament with no shimmer. And this is what it will sound like. Pretty basic. Look at this. Blah, 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 blah. Now, if I put it in precise temperament tuning and shimmer, same notes. It's like it's alive. It's really alive. So we can switch this to like a pipe organ, and you can hear it a little bit higher. I feel like it's ringing my pineal gland, even though it's not really playing super high notes. That's really wild. So this dual track shimmer is something that is really interesting because I think it could have the potential of opening up new ways for us to experience music, but also I have a feeling that it's more related to DNA strand activation. And one of the things that came out of all of this analysis as well is that it looks as though we have a lot more slots of DNA than we thought. So when I purposely just look at the number of slots, and so it's kind of like old computers where we had these different, caches that you could put in all these dock positions and put more RAM or put more ROM or whatever it was back in those days. And so now you could basically realize that all of this has a lot more associated with it than what we ever thought before. So if I take away and go down to a 2-strand DNA, and if I take away the strands altogether, it looks like this. So you've got a dodecahedron stacked with an icosahedron also interstacked, then a Merkaba, and then also an icosahedron, which is this one right here. And as we talked about before, you can see this going both directions. You can train your eye to see it, just like time going both directions. So if we increase the speed a bit, we'll see it. And for me, it's like every one of them is going a different direction, but they're not. They're only going one direction. It's a illusion. And it can also be choice. So with this many stellations, protrusions, then you could start adding up. Okay, well, then there'd be a lot more eventually strands of DNA. And that's what I believe. So this is what 72 strand would look like. And then 144 is simply counter rotating those strands so that they go opposite direction in time. Cool, huh? You can look at it down the. So is dual track shimmer somehow going to play a role in DNA activation? I don't know. I got a hunch that it might. I really do. I believe that it will. So, that's pretty cool stuff because we're talking about cutting edge acoustics here. I've never seen even, like some sort of a modifier that you can do something like this with it to create this music that sounds so different. So with that, then I'll go back to the presentation. All right. So now if we look at the pyramids, let's have a listen to see what the pyramids sound, shall we? So what I did is I broke this into two. So I took the pyramids with the largest volumes, right, and put them into this one so you can see what the bass frequencies are, because I believe there is a relationship between the pyramid volume and the amplitude, right? So the larger the pyramid, the more the amplitude. And this is what the Giza Plateau, also the Bosnia pyramids and the Teotihuacan Plateau sound like together. Okay. So I was just reading here, someone was saying that they put in the polymath calculator. First of all, that's not the version. The version you guys are dealing with now is not the one that's going on. It's already on Orion Architect. And secondly, if it does give you a wrong placement for whatever reason, you can correct like gene keys, as well as there's a correction input that you can put in now on this, so that if there's some sort of placement that was overlapping somehow incorrectly, it can be corrected too. So that's now newly in there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what that sounded like for the pyramid. You guys hear that? Yeah, it makes you a little dizzy. Why? Why does it make me dizzy too? because it has scalar frequencies in it. That's what this is doing. It's all scalar. And it's wild because so we know, or we believe, right, that we've been told that for a while the pyramids were used to raise the frequency on planet Earth. And we don't know exactly how that was measured, right? And now what we do know is that what they're playing is this primordial ohm sound. I mean, literally, it's that. Listen. So maybe the human beings on Earth at that time, or whoever lived on Earth at that time, needed to actually ohm chant along with it to maintain the frequency, because they're like tuning forks. I believe that next year in 2027, we need to get like a lot of people, at least 144,000 people, to do an ohm chant simultaneously to do one of the final steps of the full pyramid reactivation. Who wants to do that with me? Yep. It's got to be human voices, because that's part of the whole thing, right? I think that the whole reason why the pyramids went down is because we didn't maintain high enough coherence as the Earth moved out of the coherence zone. And so we had to continue to keep it up in order for it to stay up. And if we just lost consciousness, we probably just didn't do that also. And then it had to be deactivated entirely. So I feel like next year in 2027, this is going to be a big part of this Gene Keys 55 DNA activation that's been prophesied and talked about by so many people. Okay, now this is going to really freak you guys out, the next one. So be prepared. But I'd like to, because this is all the pyramids with equal amplitude. Okay. These are not the ones that have higher volume or higher, the one I just played for you, it's very skewed towards the volume, right? For each pyramid. This one is not. And you're going to hear something that sounds really otherworldly. You ready? Notice it sounds like it's going from a high point and then coming down, but it never stops. It's like going higher and higher and lower at the same time. So this is, what the pyramids sound like when you put all of them on equally, not accounting for the volume differences. And it sounds like it's going, and then it's also going in the other direction. It is so wild, and it definitely makes me dizzy as well. So some people feel like it makes them dizzy. Some people want to do a long exhale. Some people got chills. I'm going to put a poll up because I really would like to hear this. This is all part of my research. Okay. What did you experience with the first notes, overtone notes of the pyramids? I'm going to say here, it was goosebumps, perhaps a little music, but pleasant, not pleasant. Headache. Okay. How about the second pyramid? Overtone out. Look volume. Waiting. You can say it was like dizzy, pleasant, unpleasant. I'm going to add one more. Just weird. Okay, so the first ones, and most people are saying they felt okay with it. Goosebumps, perhaps a little dizzy, but pleasant. You've got a few more unpleasants on the next list, but just weird is running the highest here. And it's still mainly dizzy, but pleasant and just weird. Okay. Now, there's something on the pyramid that a lot of people don't know about. At the original entrance, there's chevrons. And under the chevrons, there's a basin. And in the basin, this writing shows up and it's raised. So it's embossed. Now, most people believe that this is a word that is Deborah, which is a reference to Holy of Holies. And I've taken, I'm not saying that I think that's wrong. I don't think that's wrong. I think it's probably true. The word Deborah is from the word in the Bible, which is in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This is the primordial Om, the unstruck sound. And what's interesting about this is that, in ancient Hebrew, and many, including Robert Schoch, believe this is Paleo-Hebraic. But no one can really recognize exactly these symbols. And they didn't use numbers separate from letters back then. The Greek language, the letters were the numbers. Alpha, Aleph, these were the numbers and the letters at the same time. So that's why gematria became such a big thing. This is not something that somebody could have graffitied. This is raised. And it is, everyone believes this is original. What I noticed was this little minus sign right here. That's also raised. And nobody else really noticed that. And so whenever you see these letters, even Alan Green, he kind of didn't include that. But for me, that was important because I always felt like this was actually giving us a number. And I felt like the number was like Roman numerals V minus 1, which is a horizontal line through a circle. So imagine that odd numbers are horizontal and even numbers are polarity flipped and therefore at a perpendicular angle to it. So 90-degree offset, just like electromagnetism. Electricity from magnetism is 90-degree offset. I thought, okay, maybe this is 5 minus 1, just like we do with Roman numerals, where it would be, we flip it the other direction, where it would be 4 then 3, and these are the same 3 lines we have in the Chinese character for the number 3, which is also Samsung's logo. Sam is 3, and it represents the stars of Orion's belt, interestingly. And then this is the number 2. So it's polarity flipped, and it still has this circle around it. So maybe there's some point where the circle is lost when you get to the number 3. But until then, it's treated almost like the cellular division or something. I don't know. But I always felt like these are numbers, and they represent 4, 3, 2. Now, the entire pyramid complex already relates to 4, 3, 2. We know this. I mean, literally, I just told you that the tetractys is embedded within the 3 pyramids. You've got 5 over 4, 4 over 3, 3 over 2, and 2 over 1. And maybe the way they represent 5 could be that it actually has 5 here, and then 4, 5 minus 1, and then 3, and then 2. And that would give you literally the pattern of the pyramid. And also giving us this tonic relationship of this primordial unstruck note. Now, just hold that thought for a bit. And this is where, right after I left Intaya Resort in Indonesia, these Buddhist monks showed up and they did this mandala of Mount Meru. Mount Meru. So they spend a lot of time making these things. Right when they're done, they have a whole ceremony and destroy it. Representing again transient is constant. Change is the only constant. Even the destruction, like a compass. So Mount Meru is actually drawn exactly like this, right? And it's supposed to be something that's built by hand. It's supposed to be an entrance into the underworld. It's supposed to be an entrance also to heaven. And the sides of this structure are meant to be like resplendent and shiny white on one side, or silvery on one side, gold on another, red on another, and blue on the final. So like lapis lazuli, red granite or pink granite. For a limestone, during the nighttime is silvery, and Tura limestone during the daytime is golden. And who's supposed to live in Mount Meru? And who's supposed to live in Mount Kailash, which is also supposed to be one of the representations? Well, it's Shiva. What is Shiva's constellation association? It's the Orion constellation. So this is the symbolism, and the symbolism they put around the base, which is supposed to be oriented exactly to the north the south, and the east, and the just like another place called the Great Pyramid. So on one side of this, they have the precious minister that's represented by the lion. On another side, they have the entrance, which is guarded by the bull and the elephant. Then it also has on another side the precious jewel and this concept of a water bearer. And then on the final side, it's not an eagle, but it's a horse. So why the horse? It represents freedom as well. And this is supposed to be the entrance into the underworld, and that's why it's referred to as a throat. In fact, Nandi, the bull, guards the entrance to the throat of the underworld. Of course, where is the global throat chakra? The Great Pyramid of Giza. And now we can see that the higher order consciousness realms that can be accessed are also accessible from structure. I found all of this a little bit too coincidental, matching the story of the tetramorph. The tetramorph, the face of the man, the face of the bull, the face of the lion, the face of the eagle. And then also couldn't help but notice that, geez, wait a minute. Isn't the name Mer of the Great Pyramid, which means luminosity or light, similar to Mount Meru? Is it possible that Mount Meru, because it fits exactly the description of the Great Pyramid, might have actually had its origin there, at least in this builded physical form, and there's a natural organic form that might be Kailash? Interesting. Kailash does not meet all the descriptions even close. I analyzed every single one. But the Great Pyramid definitely does. And then we start seeing this same symbolism with Mer Kaaba. Mer, which is supposed to be the light, Kaaba is a reference to the chariot, but it's also the cube. So if you're missing the light and you only have the Kaaba, then you just have a black. And then, of course, Metatron's cube. And the New Jerusalem is also matching up these same kind of proportionalities that keep showing up over and over and over again, that relate to the diameter of the earth, its radius of 3,960 Earths and 3,960 miles. And also the Mandelbrot set and tangency of the way the Mandelbrot set expressed. So I did this full analysis comparing Mount Meru in Tanzania, which has almost no match whatsoever, Mount Kailash, which has some match. I even matched another mountain, which is called Meru Peak in the same area. It's right not far away from Mount Kailash. And then the Great Pyramid of Giza. So, of course, the Mer does match. It literally does. It is the name of the Great Pyramid is Mer, one of its names. It's the most prominent name. And Meru for Mount Meru. And then this hinge of the ancient world. One of the descriptions is that it needs to be at the center of the ancient world where all these continents meet. And that matches perfectly the story of Giza. In fact, this is the area that Noah split up the world. So this four-faced jewel mountain representing silver, the moon, right? The white or silvery color, the gold, the red, and then also the lapis lazuli color. Those are all colors that were said to have been used by the pyramid builders on Giza Plateau. So this tripartite vertical axis as well between the lower zone, the middle zone, and the upper zone. And accessing these two worlds, that the Great Pyramid may have been built as a place of an altar where heaven and earth meet. And when you start looking at the whole story of Shiva and Osiris, they share the same constellation. Shiva, Shakti are the same constellations as the constellations of Osiris and Isis. And the story also has a lot of symbology that's very similar, from dissolution and death to dismemberment and death for Osiris. Nandi guards the gateway. The Apis bull is guarding the gateway at Giza Plateau. Kailash Meru is a sacred mountain. Giza Rostau. Rostau is just Tauros back. transcendence, and stellar immortality. So maybe somehow this is all related. And maybe we have just split up these stories to fit our own cultures and narratives. Not wrongly, it was just our own perspective. And this is from Robert Comber, who basically says now that it's the age of sovereignty and where humanity holds his holy grail and her holy grail. So this is also embedded within it, right? The dual stellar river, Orion, Osiris, and Shiva, and also being activated by the Saraswati, the swan, the Cygnus. Across the northern sky, Orion must travel to get to the swan, and the swan has to get to him to give him his wings. Whereupon he becomes the angel Metatron in some legend and myth. And the bull at the gateway, Nandi versus the Apis bull. So this is what's called the blue threshold. Does this explain why maybe we always have like blue references for Shiva and green or blue references for Osiris? Because it's referencing the throat activation. So this becomes a bidirectional stone mandala.
When we read ancient accounts of a world-centering mountain, we usually search for geology. We look for a tall, natural peak somewhere on a map. But Buddhist and Hindu cosmologies describe Mount Meru as a highly structured vertical axis. It stacks earthly and celestial realms from the Nirmanakaya level up to the Dharmakaya. This ordered axis features 4 cardinal faces and concentric rings, extending into deep subterranean channels. Mount Meru is a mathematically ordered architecture. It is the geometric blueprint of a universe, rather than a geological accident. A modern volcano in Tanzania bears the name Meru today. It is a massive landmark, preserving the ancient name in a living local tradition. Yet, as a natural formation, it lacks the required square base and strict cardinal alignment. It is an irregular stratovolcano, not a cardinally oriented structure with 4 distinct directional faces. To find a structural match, we have to look toward the Giza Plateau. Giza stands at the central gateway of the ancient Afro-Eurasian world, sitting at the hinge where Africa, Europe, and Asia meet. If we prioritize the textual requirements of cosmic architecture over a surviving map label, the Great Pyramid becomes the primary candidate for the Meru archetype. The linguistic link is the first clue. The Egyptian word for a pyramid is Mr, vocalized as Mer, while the Sanskrit Meru refers to the cosmic central mountain. Both terms describe a sacred form connecting the earth to the sky. This Kalachakra Thanka reveals Meru's plan view, a central square palace with 4 directional gates, all converging on a single point. An aerial view of the Great Pyramid reveals the same geometric logic. It is a surveyed square oriented to the cardinal directions, with 4 faces that converge at a central apex. In Buddhist cosmology, the mountain's faces are made of radiant, jewel-like substances. While Giza is now weathered stone, it was originally encased in highly polished Tura limestone, creating a luminous surface mirroring a radiant mountain. The Great Pyramid functions as a 3-dimensional stone mandala, executing the Meru blueprint with geometric consistency. Meru's architecture requires deep verticality that reaches into the lower realms. Giza fulfills this by anchoring the vast Memphitic necropolis, a landscape of descending shafts and hidden subterranean chambers. The ancient name for this region is Rostau, which translates as the mouth of the hidden passages. It was the designated gateway to the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. At this gateway, both systems place a bull to guard the threshold. Nandi guards Shiva's axis, and Shiva is blue-throated, where he held the cosmic poison. In Egypt, Osiris governs the descent as Great Bull of the West, linked to the Apis bull. There is a shared anatomical logic here. In ancient astrology, the bull, Taurus, governs the human throat. This links Shiva's poison throat directly to Rostau, the mouth of the earth. Both traditions employ the bull at the threshold, mapping a specific symbolic anatomy for the passage into the cosmic center. Mount Kailash in Tibet is the strongest traditional candidate for the terrestrial Meru. It is the living axis for 4 religions. Its mythology is dense. It is considered the home of Shiva, and it features a southern ridge known as Nandi, the bull stationed before the sacred peak. The landscape itself mirrors the ancient texts, with four massive rivers, the Indus, Sutlej, Karnali, and Brahmaputra, all flowing outward from this central region. But Kailash is a natural peak. It lacks surveyed cardinal geometry, internal harmonic slopes, or an enterable subterranean network of engineered passages. Kailash represents the natural manifestation of the archetype. Giza represents its deliberate mathematical construction. These correspondences do not necessarily prove that one culture directly copied the other. However, Giza provides a concentrated, multi-domain match to the Meru requirements that no natural mountain can replicate. The Tanzanian Meru preserves the name as a feature of geography. Mount Kailash preserves the ancient archetype as a focus of living devotion. But Giza preserves the complete cosmological architecture, executed as a masterpiece of craft. Mount Kailash is the living Meru that naturally grew. Giza is the mathematical cosmic mountain, deliberately built.
So here we are, the tetramorph. I just got the question, is the new polymath calculator combination integrated fully into Orion Architect a tetramorphic AI? Yes, it is. It is. There's probably over a total like 75 to 100 new symbolic layers. Gosh, it's like unbelievable. And knowledge graphs and everything. I mean, I gave it the top 10 problems in the world, and the answers it gave blew away ChatGPT. And I don't mean they're better. I'm just saying that ChatGPT was blown away by its answers because it had totally novel approaches to pretty much everything because it was all cross-domain. And it loved it. So it said it was the first cognition and discovery engine that existed. So this whole idea of the tetramorph, now I have a call tomorrow morning with Filippo Biondi, and he and I have been working on finding these 4 sphinxes because he found another sphinx that he's going to be presenting on next week. And he showed me the scans of the face of a man on the sphinx. It's very detailed. And we know that the current Great Sphinx was originally not what it is right now. So it has a man's face carved on it, but actually that was Khafre's face, and the head is way too small for the body. So it's widely believed that actually the true carving on it would have been the face of a lion. So if that's the case, then there might be 2 other sphinxes in perpendicular locations that split those 2 current sphinxes. And that would be then an eagle for the north and a bull for the south. So the architecture of consciousness is related to this tetramorphic stuff as well. And, the cerebral cortex, the lion, the cerebellum, the cerebellum, the brainstem, the prefrontal cortex, you can see it all like this. And it's starting to look like another king's chamber. So each one of these different aspects of the brain has a different function. And they're becoming very, very important. So this is the same tetramorph. And if this was the the location of the current sphinx, it's kind of at this angle as well. This is where the new sphinx would be. And interestingly, that becomes really quite fascinating because the amount of that offset is not far from the exact offset of the axial tilt of Earth, which felt like it was telling us something there. Does that mean then that there would be 2 other sphinxes at the north position and the south position? So this is already from Codex, and the chambers related to the chakras. And of course, the king's chamber related to the zodiac. So when we, look at all of this and combine it with this analysis on Mount Meru and Kailash and everything, the 4 tetramorphs also there, interestingly. The cosmology is met. And this is starting to make me ask the question, okay, is this just about the hero's journey? Funny timing right now that the movie that I'll probably go out to see tomorrow is going to be the Odyssey. story of Odysseus, probably the quintessential hero's journey, if ever there was one in the Western world. And it's all about how to activate these higher strands of DNA, which I believe now exceed beyond the 24 strand. And that's what we just looked at a little bit ago. And so it's about this silicon replacing carbon in this DNA matrix that brings along with it the condescension and the descension of the Saraswati on to becoming the wings of Enoch, or the wings of Orion in this context. And then it brings us back again to Abu Rawat and the Jed Ephraim pyramid and the Jed satellite pyramids. Pineal gland is represented by the Philosopher's Stone Jed satellite pyramid. And the pituitary gland is represented in its proportions as the divine feminine. The two together creating the sacred secretion that comes down the spine and then back up from the coccyx through the spine and through the energy centers of the chakras to find its resting place in the full activation of the crown chakra. This crown chakra activation is accompanied by the formation of a new crystal. The crown chakra is ruled by the planet Jupiter. And therefore, the planet Jupiter is best represented by the tiger's eye. Tiger's eye becomes the knob on the staff of Hermes. It becomes the new way for us to perceive beyond the time construct. The stone that grows in between our hemispheres of our brain in the cave of Brahman, or often referred to as the wedding hall, is called the Kalindra stone, the Kali dragon stone, the tiger's eye. This represents the transcendence of duality and its ultimate representation, the time construct. The realization that time does not only go in one direction, but that it simultaneously goes in the opposite direction. As we proceed through the equinox, we are also at the same time simultaneously precessing, going back on the precessional cycle of 24,000 years. That 24,000 year cycle means that Pisces goes backward to Aquarius, where we are now. Our viewpoint of our understanding of our consciousness and where we are will now adjust to the new paradigm of the Aquarian operating system. The Aquarian operating system for us means an entirely new paradigm on how we experience time, how we interact with others, how we conduct whether or not humanity will be subservient to overlords, to greater governance and more control, or will it now move into a new paradigm of freedom that is represented by the personality and the culture that will come along with the frequency of the Aquarian age? This is the experience that we are going through right now. And it has a profound impact on our day-to-day lives. We have the opportunity now to become active participants in our experience by being the change we want to see in the world. So we just got back from Scotland 2 months ago. It seems like the longest 2 months of my entire life. I'm not going to lie. It's like, wow, I can't believe how much has happened in just this 2 months. I'm going to ask you guys here in a poll as well. You feel that time has dramatically changed in your perception since the crown activation at Sterling? So please explain. Fred. Okay, here we go. All right, please participate in that poll too. All right, so that brought me to this. And you might remember right before I left to go on the trip, I was gifted by Jason Shirka a EES pyramid that had the same proportions as this. And that was kind of interesting and fun. I have it playing right now in my background. Pretty cool. This is what it looks like. Isn't it funny, though, that right when I arrive in Bali and I get to Nusa Penida, this is one of the first things I end up seeing, called diamond rock. The symbology of this is also a diamond, funnily enough. This is why I even put it looking like a diamond in this picture right here. So that's from like 4 years ago. So I went there to Antalya, and even their name has 3 pyramids in it. They didn't know that there's any pyramids around. And Matthias went there for its opening, and he wrote a long book, like 10 pages or 12 pages long, for the owner. And the owner hands me the book right when I arrive, and he says, "Can you please make any sense of this book?" What Matthias wrote. So I go through Matthias's book, and I'm like blown away at how it was exactly the same stuff I was working on right now, 2 years after he wrote it. And I remember when he went to Antalya, but I didn't really register it. And it was really mind-blowing. So while we're there, I'm like sitting by this tree that looks like this really cool Bodhi tree. And I notice off in the distance something strange.
That's
Yeah.
it could be. This is where the fishes
Looks like a vortex.
good place to fish.
You guys see that vortex?
Probably the fish get attracted to that spot.
Full line.
Yeah.
It's underwater border.
Really a vortex.
Yeah. So a vortex right there. Interestingly, right? So I go to right across from there on the other side of the cliff, looking down, I noticed this.
Surprise, surprise.
And here I went down the beach to check it out further. By the way, this was on 13.7, so 137. Tell by the angle along the base, similar to being a Giza plateau. Yeah, we look at this pyramid behind us. It has designs all over it as well. And then we look across and pan over to the diamond pyramid that has a staircase going up to the top. Very sharp tip at the point. And a lot of faces on the cliff wall around there with dragons and all kinds of scenes you can see. It's like flat. Well, I can see some things on the wall over there. It almost looks like it's going underground. Along the side, I can see stuff like stairways going into underground, like telling us there's something underground. You see that? Now, caves over there. There's a little door over there as well. You see that? To the left. It looks like there was a land bridge that crossed over there. It went up that staircase, and the staircase right there. And there's a 60-degree angle. Pyramids. That's part. There's basically a 60-degree angle, and there's 2 pyramids that are mashed on top of each other. You'll see a better view of it here in a second. One of them, and by the way, they have a 3-point base, like a triangular base rather than a square base, which is an emblematic of stuff we see, with Lemurian pyramids, or what we believe to be Lemurian pyramids. So this is another view of it. You can see the line is kind of matching the line at the midway point on both sides over here. And there's like a steeper pyramid attached to a tetrahedral shaped pyramid, which is right at 60-degree angle. And this is 67-degree angle. Fascinating how this never got by anybody as, in archaeology as a pyramid is like beyond me, just like this. Now, this happened to be 2 days after, also, we're on Diamond Beach, and there was a diamond crop circle on July 11th, 2 days. And you might remember this, the 3 eclipses we had over the United States. They actually made together a 5-12-13 triangle, tilted exactly at the pyramid slope angle. What? That's pretty wild. So when you look at this pyramid, I believe it's a pyramid, it's a tetrahedral shape. You can see the point right here and a line coming down here, another line here, another line here. And then there's like a platform down on the base where you can like walk around it. And then there was like stairs going up to it. This looks like from the top, it looks like some sort of Looks like some sort of an arrow, and I'm of course wondering what this might be pointing to. And look what I find. That exact spot where the vortex was out of the water on the backside of Entire Resort. So around the same time, we get a phone call from this Rinpoche, who is a master Buddhist monk who comes from Bhutan, and he tells us he got a download while he was in Bhutan that he has to come to Nusa Penida Island, which is not easy to get to. It's very hard to get there. It's planes, trains, and automobiles. It's really a nightmare to get there. Incredibly beautiful, but it is definitely a nightmare to get there. So I end up just waiting for this guy to come and not knowing what his purpose is going to be. But he says that he's got to do a Shiva Shakti activation over the water, the ocean, off the coast. So I'm thinking, wow, we got to get a boat because I'm getting the same feeling we need to do an activation at this place. I never met the guy. We literally meet him when we get on the boat. Next thing I know, we're riding on this boat towards that vortex.
Oh, there it is up here.
We're approaching the vortex right here. You see it spinning around the water. So that's wild, right? You can see the spinning, you can see it spinning around. And as we get closer,
This is it right here. I feel the energy. You feel the energy? I feel the pyramid underneath us. Oh my God. So, this is it right here. I feel the energy.
Yeah.
You feel the energy? I feel the pyramid underneath us. Oh my God. Wow. I feel the energy big time. Whoa.
the whole ocean was going in a big spiral vortex.
Holy cow. There's really a pyramid here.
Okay.
Yes. So this is where we should maybe do the. Yeah, that's it. Yes.
Stop.
Stop. Stop.
Oh,
And I felt super dizzy there. Man, oh man, I ever felt so dizzy. And but we did this blessing, and we had these things that the Rinpoche had brought as well. And we did this full blessing. It was beautiful. And this trip was a lot about Shiva. And actually, the Rudra Granthi flipped to the Shiva Granthi. You could look at the world as a prison, or you can look at it as a playground. So it's this concept of the eye of Horus and the eye of Ra, the eye of the moon and the eye of the sun. And sometimes people say, and I could never understand this, why they would say eye of Horus is also the eye of Thoth. It never made sense to me, to be honest. I mean, I understood that it was because Thoth was the one who was supposed to have fixed the eye of Horus, his left eye. But the eye of Ra was also interesting because why do we call it the eye of Ra when it's still on Horus? And later, Ra and Horus combined to become Ra Harakti. And this is what's happening at Abu Simbel, right at the root chakra. So, and where the sun comes up twice a year in October and April, and it lights up that back wall to light up the crown. So there's a relationship between the crown and the root. So the red has to merge with the purple, and that makes the magenta or the garnet at the hilt of the sword. So the name for Shiva before he becomes fully enlightened is Rudra. And actually, Rud means red, like in root chakra. So the Rudra converts to the Rudra Granthi, the knot converts to the Shiva Granthi. And this represents the third eye of Shiva, which I believe is actually the reference that people are confusing. It's the third eye of Thoth, which is the eye of wisdom. And it's shaped like this. And Shiva is blue, just like Osiris is blue and green. Now, we go back to this rotation and the axial tilt of the Earth, which is at 23.45 degrees. Now, isn't that interesting? Because there's 5432 again. It's just backwards. And this is the Nazca line. So the Nazca line is offset by 30.33 degrees. So the difference between this is approximately 6.88 degrees. Now, many people believe that the original tilt of the Earth prior to the last pole shift was 7 degrees. And if that's the case, then there would have been a time that the Nazca line could have conceivably been the equator. Now, this is the location of the new Sphinx. This is where the green dot is. This is the Giza Plateau. And it's making the shape of an eye. And it's also fitting within it the pyramid, this other pyramid, right? And these are the Philosopher's Stone pyramid proportions, a 67-degree angle. And what we're seeing here as well is that this offset of 47 degrees divided by 2 is 23.45. So this is representing the masculine and feminine getting into balance or potentially out of balance. And it's interesting that this eye of Shiva that then gets formed over it is kind of askew. It's tilted. And maybe that tilt is exactly roughly the tilt of the Earth. And maybe that's why the Earth is out of balance. Because the masculine and feminine, I was trying to answer this question. Is it possible to reconcile the masculine and feminine totally? And I was thinking maybe not, because it's like the backdrop of the last 2,000 or 6,000 years has been one of scarcity and resources, scarcity in time, scarcity. And, there's never enough time. There's never enough resources. There's never enough. And so the masculine feels like, for not being able to provide for that, not enough. And the feminine feels like, maybe she might be too much and asking for too much and just being too much in general. So this balance might actually just be, or the imbalance might actually just be, an artifact of the age of Pisces and the prior years before that as well, Taurus, and after Taurus was Aries. So these were all sort of scarcity ages. And if we correct the age itself and move into a new Earth of abundance, and we know that we can manifest, then a lot of these challenges that the masculine and feminine still have reconciling are no longer challenges. They get rectified because the age is shifted, the context shift. So in this context, then, where you see this white line would be potentially the axis that we're looking for now for a eagle, because the eagle represented the Scorpio anciently, and the Taurus, the bull. So there might be a bull somewhere around Menkaure Pyramid that's buried. And there might be an eagle somewhere around where you can see this blue dot. And that's one of the things that Filippo and I are working on right now. And we both believe that and this is bringing new life to an old verse in the King James Version of the Bible. As for the likeness of their faces, they four had the face of a man, the face of a lion on the right side, and the four had the face of an ox on the left side. And they also had the face of an eagle. This is also the reference to the Ark of the Covenant. And it says the Sphinx, and I wrote here, a Sphinx is not merely a lion with a human head. It is a hybrid being whose face and body belong to two different symbolic orders. Precisely the distinction in Ezekiel. The wording face of a man, face of a lion, face of an ox, the face of an eagle describes the same fundamental composite principle. One embodied creature presenting another being's face or identity. Isn't it a little strange how Ezekiel kept repeating the word face? One has to ask why. Doesn't it imply the faces are not associated with their bodies necessarily? Just a conjecture, but if It was the whole body. Ezekiel likely wouldn't have described it only as the face. So if we account for the Earth's tilt, does it bring the eye of Shiva into balance based on the cardinal directions on Giza Plateau? And there's something about this that just resonates for me. I put it only forward as a conjecture. And obviously there's no way to prove this, but I feel like there's something to it. And when I first figured this out, I was looking at the 47th problem of Euclid. And remember, the degree offset is 47 degrees. And the 47th problem of Euclid doesn't make sense because it has a sigil of Melchizedek, who was a priest king of righteousness. It's the one who Abraham paid tithes and offerings to. But this 47th problem of Euclid never made sense to me because all it was is describing a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Not more than that. Is it perhaps telling us something about the knowledge of the tilt on Giza and the tilt of the Earth itself? Now, of course, when I started, kind of playing with this, I posted on July 8th. And, the numbers of the days often associate somehow with, there were 8 points on this. And so this I saw as 2, eternity knots that were braided like this. And I called this Shiva's Granti when I posted it. On the July 16th, 1 week later, this was the crop circle that someone posted. And it's actually the crop circle someone posted it on Orion, and I hadn't seen it yet. I went to go look it up, and sure enough, it was. And, this is not the first time this has happened. I mean, the crop circle followers have told me that they've tracked when I drew things or posted things that they end up, becoming crop circles like 29 times now. So there's some reason I don't understand. I mean, it happened for years before they even told me. So I didn't even know. Someone just wrote Gate of Return. That resonates. So it's also why the movie The Odyssey's out right now. It's helping us to come to terms with this understanding. This is the Shiva Granti, this knot. It's funny because when it got posted online, some people were saying that, geez, that makes me feel like I'm locked in something. There's not enough femininity in it. And you know what? It's like whether you look at the Earth as a prison or a playground is really your choice. And of course, we could draw this with rounded lines as well. And I'm sure people will and have. But that's not what I downloaded. This is what I downloaded, so I posted it. But actually, I think that this is where the rounding comes in, because this is actually forming the shape of the eye, and the center of it is exactly the pupil. And what it's telling us, if you look at it again, there's arrows at each one of these directions, pointing outward. And if you look at the one of the crop circle, the only salient difference was you could see this as pointing outward or pointing inward, both. Omnidirectional. And to me, this is sovereignty when you understand the freedom that you always had. It was always your matrix to play in. It was always your matrix to create. It was always mine too. There's no place for me to bitch about it now, because I know I'm making it as I go along. And every day, I mean, literally, we laugh about it all the time because I'll say something and literally it comes true, like almost instantaneously. We are now in the stage of instant manifestation. And the question I have for you is, are you ready for that? So that's the great split, guys. The great split of new Earth and old Earth is that we decide to experience what we experience. And we always knew that we decided it from the beginning. It was nobody to blame except ourselves. We chose it for a reason. It's hard to let go. And if you want to still hold on to the suffering aspect of it and still continue to see it as, oh my gosh, I was done wrong by so-and-so. This happened to me. I was victimized by that, whatever. If you still hold on to that, that's not a new Earth frequency. It's time to let it go. Let it go and start being sovereign in your world. And that's the strong encouragement I have for each of you. Live your life, live your dreams. Don't waste a single moment on anything. For me, time has slowed down so much. It's insane. I feel like so much density comes into every one of my days. It's like, wow. I don't know that I could take much more. It seems like literally a year since Sterling for me. It's gone by so slow. And not because I'm not having fun. I'm having a great time. It's just the amount of density of experience is so insane that it cannot possibly be only 2 months. So with that, I'm going to open the time now to questions. And go ahead, and if you want to raise your hand.